Hey guys, welcome back to the What About AI podcast. I'm Sean Boyce,
I'm James Perkins.
and the topic for this episode is about what IBM is specifically doing related to hiring, and in particular, Gen Z, more junior type of employees, and how that is significantly different from what we're seeing in the larger workforce at the moment, especially as AI continues to roll out and start to largely kind of replace what had previously been thought to be reserved for more junior roles. So, what we've researched most recently is IBM has decided to triple down on their hiring, basically of like entry level, junior type positions, mostly Gen Z type folks, and also targeting roles that have previously been pretty significantly affected or impacted by AI in a negative way, those being largely junior kind of software developers. So, what we've talked about on this show previously was that a lot of companies are essentially kind of abandoning hiring junior roles, especially like junior developers, in favor of leveraging AI technology instead. And one of the concerns was, if we're not hiring junior developers, how are we going to make future senior developers? Like, does that not break that pipeline? So IBM has come out and said that they're reversing course. So whereas upwards of like 40 to 50% of companies are taking the opposite approach here, IBM is going to do it differently, and they're going to hire more junior folks and specifically going to be targeting more of those like developer type roles. So curious to hear your thoughts on what the strategy looks like they might be doing so far.
On the surface, this sounds really good. It sounds like a company is hiring a bunch of Gen Z, up and comers to kind of ramp them up and get the workforce going again. I think in reality, just below the surface, this is not a good sign. And I think the reason being they're probably just cutting the highest salaries from the top of the
Hmm.
house and bringing in the junior developers and expecting that those junior employees or Gen Z hires coupled with AI internally will be enough to make up the difference.
Hmm.
So they're paying less for the same workforce effectively. And I don't know how much upward mobility will be there for these Gen Z hires with the approach they're taking. So I feel like this is probably a confirming condition for what you had said previously about how they'll start to slowly phase out folks with AI. Um, if you're Gen Z, you need some hope. But for any knowledge worker, whether you're Gen Z or Boomer or in the middle, it's not a good sign. This is, I think it's very temporary. I think this is going to be kind of like IBM's way to see how well AI does in automating some of the work or augmenting some of the work before they do that in the rest of their workforce.
Hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. My initial inclination was to kind of go there as well too. Obviously, from IBM's perspective, what they're saying is they're worried about basically the pipeline breaking, everything that folks have talked about in terms of what most others are starting to do in stop focusing on the junior roles, largely suppress hiring there, and instead empower the workforce they currently have with AI or use AI to kind of replace those more junior roles. So it'll be interesting to see how this plays out because it almost feels like it could run the gamut from anywhere from a hedge against AI's like true capabilities as it gets rolled out into the workforce and ensuring that essentially they have a pipeline of more senior developers and everybody else basically who hasn't done that doesn't. So that could work out well for them if in the event the technology doesn't materialize in the way everyone else is expecting it to, all the way to and through. I could also see your perspective as well, as in this could be a play to instead of kind of the range of how I've thought about it or how people have been like, I would say thinking about leveraging the technology is if it enables people to be 10 times more capable, basically the workforce you currently have can do 10 times more, or you can do the same with 10 times less. So it almost feels like this could be a play with that kind of ladder strategy. But I think it's kind of brilliant from a business perspective because it probably positions IBM fairly well to protect against that risk of a broken pipeline. But at the same time, if the technology doesn't materialize to be as effective as everyone expects it to be in business once it's like fully rolled out and adopted all the way to and through, if it does, they've got a bunch of people who are pretty well set up to leverage it at the highest level because they made that investment early on.
Eh, I
Not
feel
you're not buying it, huh?
I'm not buying that because they didn't bring in all these Gen Z employees and keep the more senior folks to kind of train them and ramp them up. They said goodbye, senior employees, and welcome Gen Z. So that's not really a pipeline. That's a displacement, I would call that.
I have to take a look at. It's a good question because I need to take a closer look at who, if they've had more recent layoffs, who they have targeted. Because yes, I don't. So I'm not 100% certain on the data there, but um, most of the focus on the story obviously is just that they're tripling down on hiring more junior folks.
Which is terrific. If it's
Yeah.
just that, that's terrific.
Yeah.
I don't think it is, based on what I heard. IBM also had pretty significant layoffs.
Mhm.
I mean, I had some friends I've worked with in the past that were still at IBM when this was all happening.
Mhm.
So I think I hope that more companies hire Gen Z and retain their senior employees
Same.
and build that pipeline. I don't think that's what this is. I think that's like the surface perspective. I think if you just, like I said, peel a little bit behind, you'll see that there's more there. And it's kind of indicative of they want to, using this as a case to leverage AI more and lean on AI more and less on their highest paid employees so that they can proceed with more layoffs. But we'll find out in about 6 months.
Yeah, a couple of different predictions here. We'll see who's right. If it's somewhere in the middle. I could also see it being a potential move to prepare for basically the developer of the future, right? So we've talked about this before. I think the old paradigm of like you've got your junior developer that eventually
Mhm.
becomes a senior developer, which is basically just a more experienced, better version of the previous thing. But I think an AI engineer is just different, right? So they're empowered with different technology. Everything that they do, for the most part, is probably different than any previous junior or senior track has ever looked like. So I could also see this potentially benefiting them from the perspective of basically instead of having to teach like old dogs new tricks, you bring in folks who have either grown up with this technology or potentially maybe more willing to experiment with that, given, starting, I don't know, somewhat fresh-ish kind of with it, and then seeing what that translates into moving forward. Basically, I think the question that it raises is what does the future kind of senior developer look like? Does it look more like a senior developer of today, or is an AI engineer wind up being like a completely different type role that doesn't look anything like a senior developer today?
Well, we know the answer to that question. I mean, if you're not augmented by AI, you're not going to persist in any industry or any
Mhm.
career right now. So I think it's a necessity. But is Gen Z well suited for enabling themselves with AI? Yes, 100%. I mean, my kids are doing it, all their friends are using it. They aren't quite using it in the way I'd hope for, creative extension of themselves. It's mostly for like homework help and things, but they're accustomed to using it and they've learned what works and what doesn't. So that'll be very helpful in the workforce. Um, I did catch note of the maybe it's easier than teaching old dogs new tricks comment. I don't think that's the case. I think if you're a senior developer, there's things that go beyond the actual code, right? Things around maintenance and how to do like planning for backouts if necessary and writing appropriate test cases. And AI can do these things, but there's a lot of knowledge there locked up in some of these senior employees. And I think companies would benefit equally if those folks were trained on how to use AI. So I would like to see both sides. I'd like to see Gen
Yeah.
Zers getting the chance to come up within a firm or company using AI already out the gate and learning some of the more senior tactics and tricks, and old dogs, as you call them, learning how to use AI and expanding their scope and ability to deliver within their seat. That's what I would hope happens. We'll see.
Yeah, no, agreed. And same. So I'm not saying it's not worth it to try to train experienced people on how to
Sean
use
said,
AI.
"Put the old dogs down." On record. Go
Sean
ahead.
is an old dog, okay? So if he ever said anything like that, he'd be talking about putting himself down. Um, it's more from the perspective of I agreed. I think it's you're preparing I think they could be preparing themselves for regardless what happens with the technology. Like, yes, empower your senior folks to leverage it, but also bring in younger folks
Yeah,
who leverage it as well. Because I think it's going to be a different basically career trajectory for the younger folks leveraging this technology than it was when you and I were starting and
100%.
doing these things. So, and I'm not saying that the senior folks aren't important. They're critically important. Like you can't live without them, especially now. But the question is, how much does AI transform business operations and how quickly? So I think if the more significantly it actually transforms business operations in the short term means that this bet, I think, at that point may make even more sense because of just how
Yeah, I can see
fast
that.
things are changing. Like, how quickly are they going to toss out how they were doing things before? Or is that stuff, for the most part, likely to persist? I think this is an interesting potential experiment to keep track of moving forward. And we'll do more digging on what they're doing layoff wise as well, also, because I have that open question as well, which might aid the argument that this is more of like a try to bring the wage kind of element down and save on overhead, but to see kind of as the technology rolls out and what it looks like adoption in the real world at larger businesses and at scale, which one of those kind of it's an interesting kind of contrasting approach to the direction I think everyone else is heading to see, does that position them well to compete better for what the future looks like, leveraging AI in these ways, or worse, because everyone else, made a different bet and that one paid off better.
Yeah, we
So
should get results pretty quickly too.
yeah, definitely. Should be really interesting to follow. Okay, so what does this stuff mean for, a lot on the show? Obviously, we talk a lot about preparing basically knowledge workers for, future proofing their AI, proofing the future of their careers and things like that. So what does this news mean for them?
If you're Gen Z and you're just entering the workforce, make it abundantly clear that you already are very well versed in all the latest AI tools. If you're not, like maybe you use ChatGPT or you use Grok or you use Gemini, use all of them and figure out what's different about each. You can learn that from us too. If you follow our podcast, we talk about it pretty often. We have tons of free resources on our site, whataboutai.com. Check that out. But make sure you stay in the know about what's happening because it's changing every day. And if you go into an interview and you teach the interviewer something new about AI they didn't know, that's going to work to your favor. If you're an old dog sitting in a current decent seat within your company, I keep looking at Sean, so I'm poking fun. But if you've been in the industry for a while and you know what you're doing, and you know all the existing methods of software development and approaches, and you've done agile, you've done waterfall, then you have to learn how to adopt your style to incorporate AI. It can augment you. If you tried it 2 years ago and thought, this is junk, it's way different now. It went from like grade school to high school to college to PhD level ability in the past 2 years. And we've watched it happen, and now it's changing bi-weekly. So if you haven't tried it, try it again. It's worth doing. You can definitely help improve your work output. And even if you run your code through it, it finds things every time. So it's worth taking that extra tact to leverage AI to build what you're building or explore ways you could do it differently. Or, I mean, it's just insane. Um, I would say don't wait. Don't wait for someone to teach you within the company. Teach yourself.
Well said. I think the advice I would give for especially any Gen Z or junior developers out there, people maybe coming out of school, IBM is hiring, right? So we haven't had a lot of good news like that to share on this podcast, but we're certainly looking for as much of it as we can. It looks like they're committing to tripling the hiring they're doing from an entry level perspective. So if you're shopping around currently and you're looking for a place to land, looks like IBM may have some opportunity for you. So check that out. We'll do some digging there as well and see what we can't share for you to connect those dots. And then also for the more senior devs and experienced folks in the field as well too, we'd love to hear feedback from you in terms of what may be going on the ground floor yourself. Like, what has the narrative been, at the company? Are they looking to make a major shift in how that type of work is done, or are they looking to kind of empower everyone and then connect more juniors and keep that pipeline going, kind of thing? We'd love to hear from your perspective as well too.
Definitely.
Yeah,
Good
cool.
call out.
Yep. That's pretty much what we got for this episode. Anything else you want to add before we wrap up?
No, that's all. If you were laid off recently, check out our site. We have tons of free resources. Whataboutai.com. I mean, we feel for you and we're trying to help and do the best we can. Reach out. We give free advice all the time. I mean, we have paid services too, but don't be afraid to email or reach out via socials.
Sounds good. Thanks for tuning in, guys. We appreciate it.
Thanks all.